Yeah, so the last album for the Demented, Jeff wasn't quite so close, because now we're both in the UK. It's only like a few hours for me to get up here. So last time I flew over to Canada for, what was it, a month, 6 weeks, something like that. And we literally wrote the album, I think, pretty much from scratch. We had a load of riffs that we'd sort of, well, I'd sent Jeff a load of riffs before, and you had a load of riffs already. And we were listening through to them and thought, well, I mean, they're good, but I think we can do better just between us there and then. So we actually just wrote the whole thing from scratch there.
It's more fun writing with someone else, right? Yeah. From about 97 to 2007, I would do, because I have my own studio, I would do a lot of the recording studio album creation jobs myself, mixing, mastering, engineering, producing. And that was out of necessity when the heavy metal, the business side of it kind of went down and a lot of bands were losing record deals. It was tough for people to survive, even keep their lineups together. So I ended up doing a lot of the jobs myself. I couldn't be paying mixers and engineers all this money to do things back then. So I would do it myself, and then it became more like a fun hobby to create an album from scratch and almost by yourself finish it. And you can't be good at all those jobs, but I was having a lot of fun doing it. But over the years you realize that, okay, maybe to step up the quality and the writing and the sound and everything, and it's good to bring at least one other person
and to sort of stop repeating things as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it becomes pretty much repeating yourself or pulling a little more off bands that you love than you should. So a lot of times I would write a riff and I would go, that sounds like a cool Slayer vibe riff. And then, of course, what is it? It's a cool Slayer vibe riff. So I think bringing Rich in and then later Fabio, especially on the new record, kind of drifted back to more the Waters kind of Annihilator stuff that I was doing in the first few records, which was a little more me.
Since I've been playing with this band for, say, 3 years now, and I really like to say that when I'm committed to a band, I don't tend to try and have other bands or, I don't know, spend more time and finding somebody else to play with or do other stuff. But in these 3 years, I had the honor to fill in for Raven in Sweden in 2017. That was amazing. They called me like 3 days before the show and it just flew there and I played the show. That was a lot of fun. There's this thing called Bonzo Bash, which involves 30 of some of the best drummers in metal, and I've been friend with Brian Tichy, who played drums for Ozzy and Whitesnake for a few years. And he called me and I was actually invited to go there and play with these amazing drummers.
Who?
Was Dean Castronovo, talking about Dean, and Michael Gartellone from Them Yankees and Leonard Skinner, and Ray Luzier from Korn, some amazing drummers. When we were discussing about the new record and we were talking about drums recording, the guy that came up to our mind was Randy Black, because he's the guy that knows probably the most about drum recordings, and he played on some of the ANNIHILATOR records, some amazing albums. So he came here and gave us tips on drums recordings that we actually really needed and I didn't know. And learning from that guy who's been around since the 90s and knows a lot about it, that was actually very, very helpful. And ANNIHILATOR had Randy Black, but also had Mike Mangini, who I was actually able and lucky enough to talk to a few times, and he actually gave me a few tips when I really, really needed them. And he and Randy and Mike and Ray Hartman are actually not only my favorite drummers in ANNIHILATOR, but some of my favorite drummers ever. But actually having Randy here and learning from the guy directly, that was one of the best parts of being here in the UK.
Outside of ANNIHILATOR, I've had my own band since 2009, which is called Aeon Zen, and it's like a sort of progressive, modern metal kind of crazy hybrid, so sort of wacky, cool, fun stuff that I enjoy. It's sort of where I began my love of producing and recording, because the first album was the first thing that I ever recorded myself, basically out of necessity, because that's just kind of the way it was then. You know, you sort of write these songs with a bunch of people, and before you know it, you're sort of offering up recording and seeing what you can do, you know, putting it all together yourself. And I just love the whole process, right from the songwriting all the way through to just experimenting and playing with sounds. I've got my own studio back home in Cambridge that I work from.
Cambridge, Ontario, or sorry?
Yeah, a little bit further away. Cambridge, England, in fact.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so aside from that, I've also been producing other bands, mixing other bands.
How many strings do you use, Rich?
4, always, exclusively.
Inside and out.
Always exclusive.
He uses, I think Aeon Zen, I think he uses 16 strings for his bass.
Yeah. No, it's mostly 5-string for that now, but actually I used to use 6-string almost all the time.
Fingers or pick?
Bit of both. Like if I'm doing sort of aggressive metal stuff, like distorted bass and things like that, it's mostly pick. But then, because with that stuff there's a lot of light and shade, so you've got, there's even like sort of funky slap parts and that sort of thing. So when it's not the sort of really heavy metal stuff, then I'll often switch to fingers and sort of marry it out a bit.